Athlon Sports has released their 2025 SEC projections, and they don't think very highly of Auburn.
In the world full of podcasts, he's the undisputed heavyweight champion of hot takes, an Auburn sports homer, master of the boog, and message board legend. Get your buttons buttoned and your hats flattened because the Top Button Podcast is about to kick off, and you don't want to miss your courtside seat. Now, here's your host, Charlie 5.
Yes, sir. We're back. It's another episode of the Top Button Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Rush, a.k.a. Charlie 5, and we are ready to get after it. Out of town, on location, but we're still getting the content out. Athlon Sports released their 2025 SEC projections. I got some of it's fair. I got some criticisms of some others' position rankings that they rated. We'll talk about the position ratings, and we'll talk about the predicted finish for Auburn here in just a second and break it all down. But before we do that, let's give a quick shout out to Roback.com. Use coupon code BUTTON20 to take 20% off your order. Polos, hoodies, pullovers, swimsuits, hats, visors. Doesn't matter. They got it all, and it all looks good and feels good as well. So check them out. Show them some love. Roback.com. Also, I'm waiting for that license, that new drop. There's going to be a new licensed Auburn apparel drop for the football season. Can't wait for that. I'll keep you all updated as that becomes available. All right, so let's talk about Athlon Sports. They put out their magazine every year. Everybody always gets it. That's kind of like one of the signifiers of the beginning of football season, or football season's getting closer, okay? It's kind of old-timey, getting a magazine and flipping through a magazine, but regardless, it's a tradition, especially here in the South. So they ranked every team's position groups in the SEC, and they also ranked their predicted finish for each SEC team. So Auburn didn't get a ton of love in a lot of categories. And I want to start with position rankings and go with the ones that I think are fair and the ones that I think are unfair and kind of break that down. I don't have the full list. All I have is where Auburn finishes. So we'll have to speculate on who could possibly be in front of Auburn. But let's start with what's fair, in my opinion. So you had quarterback at 12th in the SEC. The quarterback room was ranked 12th in the SEC. And I think it's fair, although I don't believe it's going to end up that way. I think it's easy to see why you would go at 12th. There's just a ton of unknown. And then what is known from a statistical standpoint, and then just if you just look at the box score and overall performance and don't really dive in, I can see where there could be a lot of question marks around Jackson Arnold. We're not going to go into the whole scenario at Oklahoma last year. We've talked about that completely ad nauseum. Like, everybody knows it was a bad situation. But when you're ranking a position group, it's really tough to rank. It would solely be on projection and guessing, basically, if Auburn is much higher than 12. So I think Auburn ends up with a much higher rank than 12th quarterback room. I think Jackson Arnold's going to be one of the top, I would say probably close to one of the top fourth in the league. I'm hoping somewhere in the top 5, top 6 as far as quarterbacks go. I really liked Dunaway and Lance Taylor's rankings. They both had him at 5th and 6th. I think that's pretty fair. And I think that's probably how things will play out. What do you think? Is 12th way too low? Is it about right? I just said fair because we don't really know. We don't really know. It's a lot of guessing going into the season. Wide receivers were ranked 2nd. Now, I know a lot of people are like, who's number 1? How could you rank anybody ahead of this Auburn wide receiver group? Look, I'm not going to split hairs between 1st and 2nd. I'm sure there's some arguments for Alabama to be the number 1 wide receiver room. I'm sure LSU could be looked at as the number 1 wide receiver room. I think that's a good spot. Hey, I tell you what, if Auburn's got the second best wide receiver group in the SEC, Auburn's going to win some football games. That offense is going to look good. They're going to be putting up points, putting up yards. I don't think that's too much to argue about. I'm not going to get worked up over a second-ranked wide receiver room with Auburn's history of not really having a ton of explosive may not be the right word. Let's just say productive passing game in general, and then wide receiver rooms overall. So again, I'm okay with second. Let me know what you think in the comments. Linebacker at 11th. I think this is very similar to the quarterback room. It's just a lot of unknown. Now, DeMarcus Riddick was fantastic last year, but he was also used as gadget's not the right word, but he was more situational. He was not a full-time guy. He was very situational as far as how he was deployed, but when he was, he tore it up. He tore stuff up. He frustrated people, and he made a lot of plays. But that's pretty much it from a returning standpoint. Robert Woodyard had some flashes last year when he got in games. But other than that, there's not a ton of snaps. You got your transfer Caleb Wheatland from Maryland, who's played a ton of football at a pretty high level. He's been pretty solid. But I can understand how this linebacker room doesn't just completely wow you from a production standpoint or a projection standpoint, because you just don't know. It's just hard to know. And there could be several teams with a little bit more established linebacker rooms that obviously would be ahead of Auburn, have a little bit more snap counts, a little bit more experience overall. I could see this one also being a little bit higher towards the end of the year. But if there's any position group that I'm somewhat concerned about, it would be linebacker. You know, when we talk about the different position groups that we, I guess, have a question mark on, or we're not 100% sure of, or we feel like that could be a little bit of a weak link, linebacker is typically in the conversation. Now, they got the opportunity to change that narrative really quick game one. So I think these are fair. I think I'm okay with these rankings. I understand probably why they shook out the way they did. But I mean, that just goes to show you, I mean, two of those position groups are on the back half of the SEC. So a lot to prove. Not a lot of love, a lot to prove, but I kind of get where they're coming from here. Now we're going to talk about what's unfair, in my opinion, and unfair rankings. So let's start with running backs. I have said running backs are a question mark, but Damari Alston was a 4-star running back. Damari Alston averaged last year over 5 yards a carry. Jeremiah Cobb was a top 150 player coming out of high school. He's also averaging close to 5 yards a carry. I don't think those guys are just, just bums. You know what I mean? Like at 13th, you're telling me there's 12 better? I mean, 13th, I mean, that puts you – I mean, that's essentially almost the whole dadgum conference has a better running back room than you, and I don't know that I'm okay with that. It's not their fault that they played behind one of the better running backs in the SEC or in the country last year that limited their touches in an offense that likes to throw it anyway. I'm not – and then you throw in the addition of Darrell Robinson. You know what? 8th or 10th, I'm okay with that, but 13th, I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine there's 12 better running back rooms than what Auburn has. I've seen people call it below average. I don't know. I don't know that I'm there. I don't know that I agree with that. Sure, there's question marks because of just lack of having that guy, that number one guy, and you don't really know exactly who that number one guy could be. But again, I just don't think there's 12 better. So that's one I think if it would have been somewhere in the 8 to 10 range, I'd have been okay with it. I'd say, you know what, that's probably fair. Right there around the middle of the pack, I'm okay with that. 13th is bad. I don't jive with that. Defensive line at 10th is also a head scratcher to me, and mainly because you have a number one pick on the defensive line. And then you have Amaris Williams backing him up. And then you have Kieron Crawford, who is being talked about as one of the more consistent and one of the more big improvers. That was a terrible phrase. One of the most improved. How about that? One of the most improved players, more big improvers. Jesus. Most improved players on the defensive line. You saw what he did last year in the last 5 games. I think he had like 12 quarterback hurries. Really turned it on, really started to figure it out and adjust to the speed of the game. And now he's got a whole year to roll. So that's on your edge. Okay. That's on the outside. Just that alone to me should put Auburn way higher than 10th, in my opinion. Then we move to the interior. And I understand the question marks in the interior, but I just think, Malik Blockton last year as a true freshman, he's up over 300 pounds now. I think Malik Blockton's going to be, I think he's going to be a beast. I think he's going to probably end up being he'll be in the top half of the SEC as far as interior defensive linemen. He worked himself into a sort of starting role when they go into true pass rushing downs. I don't know. I think that's low, man. I think again, if it was somewhere in the 7-8 range, I'm probably okay with it. 10th seems pretty low to me. Offensive line, this one blows me away. 6th in the SEC. We just had Pro Football Focus put out that Auburn has the 6th or 7th best offensive line in the country. They rate players for a living. I don't know where they come up with this. I'm thinking third or fourth, anywhere in 3 to 4, in the 3 to 4 range, and I'm fine. I can understand the argument. There's some pretty solid offensive lines, but dadgum, 6th in the SEC when you're rated elsewhere as, top 10 in the whole country, not just the conference. So I get new pieces. You got to see it shake out, but man, there's some good pieces. There's some really good pieces with Xavier Chaplin getting some first round draft projections. Connor Liu, again, we talk about him all the time. Now, Mason Murphy is starting to come along. The competition in that room is just night and day. I don't know. It's pretty low to me from a conference perspective. And then DB group. I have argued, and I think I can justify it. I think there's some arguments to be made that the DB room is just as good as the wide receiver room. So DB's going all the way down to 8th. Jay Crawford has a chance to be an unbelievable player. We've seen what Kayan Lee's been able to do on the other side. Caleb Harris could be an All-American this year at safety. The free safety, that center field safety, is sort of up for grabs. But it's up for grabs from a bunch of dudes that were very highly ranked coming out of high school. I think 8th is criminally low. I see this Auburn DB group somewhere, again, in that 3 to 4, 3 to 5 range. If some of these, and it may be because of their season prediction on how Auburn will finish, because you can't get in a situation where you kind of contradict yourself. But if these groups do play out this way, I could see the season prediction playing out the way they predicted it. And we'll talk about that in just a second. We're going to talk about the season predictions in just a second. We're going to be back right after this. All right, let's talk about their projection on the season and the ramifications of that if it were to play out that way. So they have Auburn projected to finish 11th in the SEC. Again, I can understand the logic behind it. But if Auburn were to finish 11th in the SEC, that's going to put them in that 7-5 range at best. And that's going to be a nightmare scenario for Auburn. That would be a complete 7-5 to me is the worst record Auburn can possibly have, because it's not really good enough. It's obviously not good enough, but it's not really bad enough either. It kind of puts you in purgatory. It's going to make a lot of people ask questions. It's going to make a lot of recruits ask questions. It's just going to be tough if that were to play out. I think what they're doing is they're trying to make the position group. How would the projection end up if those position groups are correct? And I think that's probably how you come up with 11th. I think Auburn finishes much better than 11th, top half of the conference. The more and more I look at the schedule and the more and more I look at the talent on this roster, it really feels like 9-3 is very, very attainable. I'm not going to go through the whole schedule. We've done that a billion times. I think 11th is a little too low, but I understand, I guess, where they're coming from. So let me know what you think. Number one, here's the questions. Do you still get the Athlon magazine? Do any of you get the Athlon magazine? I think a lot of people have it mailed to their house, or you can go to a bookstore or whatever and pick it up off the shelf. But do you ever get the Athlon magazine? I remember there was a stretch of time when I was in college that I did it, when I was just eat, sleep, live football. Auburn, when I was in school. I guess I still do that to an extent, but I don't get the magazine anymore. I remember getting it then. I would get fired up, go through it, get mad, read it, and get mad at the projections and what they're saying and things like that. So have you ever gotten the magazine? Do you still get the magazine? And then how much stock do you put in their rankings? Let me know what you think in the comments. Guys, I really appreciate it. We're going to keep the content going. We have a Friendship Friday on deck, and I think it's going to be – we're already kind of talking through it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So you're definitely not going to want to miss that. We'll be back again soon. It's another episode of the Top Button Podcast. Stay buttoned.
Thanks for listening, and drive home safely.